Ever get that feeling you're being sold something? Not a product, but an idea, a feeling, a conviction so powerful it could drive a nation to war. For as long as people have been fighting, there's been a second war waged in the shadows, a war for your mind. This is the art and science of propaganda, and it's so effective it can make millions of ordinary people willing to kill and willing to die. It's a playbook that's been refined for centuries, passed down from emperors to presidents, from generals to social media managers. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and expose that playbook. We're going to deconstruct the machinery of persuasion that nations use to get their people ready for conflict, turning regular citizens into a unified, motivated, and often aggressive force. This isn't just a history lesson. It's a survival guide for the world we live in right now. Because the same forces that shaped the battlefields of the past are shaping your reality today. Hook. We've all seen this image 1,000 times. Uncle Sam finger-pointing, eyes locked in that steely gaze declaring, "I want you." It's one of the most powerful symbols of American patriotism. But what if I told you it wasn't some stroke of pure American genius? What if I told you it was a direct copy of a British propaganda poster from 3 years earlier, featuring their Secretary of State for War in the exact same pose? The psychological tricks they used, the direct stare, that feeling of personal duty, the illusion of authority, they're not relics. They are alive and well, and they're being used in the viral videos, targeted ads, and political sound bites you scroll past every single day. In this video, we're going to break down the playbook governments use to sell war. And by the end, you'll never look at the news, a political speech, or even a viral meme the same way again. Chapter 1. The Birth of Modern Propaganda, World War I. World War I wasn't just fought in the trenches, it was the first truly industrial war, and that meant the mass production of consent. This was the moment propaganda became an official, essential tool of the government. Before you can send millions of young men to their deaths, you have to convince everyone, the soldiers, their families, the factory workers, that the cause isn't just necessary, but that it's righteous. This is where the modern propaganda playbook was written, and its first chapter was all about creating a simple emotional reality: us versus them. Their main weapons were brand new forms of mass media: newspapers with huge circulations and, most vividly, the poster. In places like Britain and the United States that relied on volunteers at first, posters were a vital recruitment tool. They didn't bother with complicated geopolitical arguments. They used pure psychology. That British poster of Lord Kitchener, the one that inspired Uncle Sam, was a masterclass. The direct gaze and pointing finger created a personal summons you just couldn't ignore. It wasn't a call to the nation, it was a direct command to you. It made patriotism feel like a personal job. But motivating your own side is only half the battle. The other, much darker half, is demonizing the enemy. To get civilized people to do uncivilized things, you have to dehumanize the target. And this is where WWI propaganda got truly monstrous. Germans weren't just soldiers anymore, they were Huns, a word specifically chosen to make you think of savage, rampaging barbarians. British and American posters showed German soldiers as giant, ape-like brutes with blood on their bayonets, kidnapping helpless, fair-haired women. One famous American poster showed a shadowy German monster stepping onto U.S. soil with the caption, "Destroy this mad brute." The message couldn't be clearer. This isn't a war between nations, it's a fight between civilization and savagery. All of this was managed by new government agencies, like America's Committee on Public Information, CPI. The CPI was a massive persuasion machine, making films, sending out speakers, and printing millions of posters to make sure every American saw the war through one government-approved lens. They sold the war as a holy crusade for democracy. If you disagreed, you weren't just wrong, you were a traitor. Through this relentless campaign, the messy complexities of global conflict were boiled down to a simple, powerful story. We are the heroes, they are the monsters, and victory is our only option. It was a formula so successful it became the template for every major war that followed. Chapter 2. The Golden Age of Propaganda, World War II. If World War I was the birth of modern propaganda, World War II was its golden age. This was a total war, meaning it required the complete mobilization of entire societies. Every factory, every farm, every citizen was part of the war machine. It wasn't enough for people to support the war. They had to sacrifice for it, work for it, and believe in it with an almost religious passion. The playbook got an upgrade using powerful new technologies like radio and film to create a media bubble where the state's message was everywhere. In Nazi Germany, propaganda wasn't just a tool for the state, it was the foundation of the state. Joseph Goebbels, the minister of propaganda, was a master of mass manipulation. He knew that the best propaganda is invisible when people think they're coming up with their own ideas. He controlled every newspaper, film studio, and radio station. Radio was especially key. The Nazis mass-produced cheap radios called the People's Receiver, making it possible for Hitler's voice to be broadcast into millions of German homes. His hypnotic, passionate speeches from meticulously staged rallies were piped directly into living rooms, forging a powerful, emotional bond with the German people. The main themes were building a cult of personality around Hitler as the nation's savior and selling the idea that victory was guaranteed. Films like Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will didn't look like clumsy propaganda. They were cinematic masterpieces, using sweeping camera angles and soaring music to portray the Nazi Party not as a political movement, but as something transcendent, almost holy. This was paired with the vicious demonization of their enemies, especially Jewish people who were scapegoated for all of Germany's problems in a campaign of hate that laid the groundwork for the Holocaust. Meanwhile, the Allies were fighting their own propaganda war. In the U.S., the Office of War Information, OWI, managed the national story. While it wasn't the totalitarian machine of the Nazi regime, its methods were everywhere. Hollywood went to war, with studios pumping out patriotic films where stars like John Wayne single-handedly won the war on screen. The legendary director Frank Capra produced a series of films called Why We Fight, made specifically to explain to American soldiers why they had to go to war. Back home, propaganda was all about total mobilization. The image of Rosie the Riveter, flexing her bicep, became a powerful symbol to get women out of their homes and into factory jobs. Posters begged citizens to save resources with slogans like, "When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler," and to buy war bonds to fund the fight. This approach was brilliant because it gave every single person a role. You weren't just watching from the sidelines, you were an active participant. By rationing your sugar, collecting scrap metal, or buying a bond, you were personally landing a blow against the enemy. It brought the public together by framing the war as a collective, heroic mission where every tiny sacrifice helped achieve the final victory. From the Führer's voice on the radio to the poster in the post office, WW2 proved that controlling the story was just as vital as controlling the battlefield. Chapter 3. The Shadow War, the Cold War. When the guns of World War II went silent, a new kind of war began. This one wasn't fought with tanks, but with ideas, culture, and information. The Cold War was a 45-year global staring contest between the US and the Soviet Union, each side absolutely convinced of its own moral superiority. The propaganda playbook had to change. The enemy wasn't a clear-cut military force, it was an entire competing way of life. The goal wasn't just to get ready for a big, bloody war, but to wage a constant, low-level psychological battle to undermine the other side's influence. This is where we get into the murky world of covert cultural influence and the crucial difference between white and black propaganda. White propaganda is the stuff we've seen so far. You know who it's from. When the U.S. government's Voice of America radio broadcast news and American jazz into the Eastern Bloc, nobody was confused about the source. The goal was obvious: show off the freedom, prosperity, and cultural coolness of the West as a better alternative to the gray, repressive world of Soviet communism. The hope was to give people behind the Iron Curtain uncensored information and spark a desire for something different. But the Cold War was also fought with black propaganda, which is way more sneaky. This is information that's disguised to look like it's coming from somewhere else. It's designed to confuse, deceive, and create chaos. For example, an intelligence agency might create and spread pamphlets that look like they were published by a rebel group inside the enemy country, criticizing the leadership. The goal was to make the enemy doubt their own leaders and believe their own side was falling apart. Maybe the most fascinating part of Cold War propaganda was the cultural battlefield. Both the CIA and the KGB knew that you could shape political beliefs with art, music, and even science. The CIA, for instance, secretly funded all sorts of cultural projects. They paid for tours of American symphony orchestras, promoted abstract expressionist painters like Jackson Pollock, and even funded literary magazines around the world. Why on earth would they do that? Because abstract art, with its wild, chaotic energy and focus on individual freedom, was the perfect visual antidote to the rigid, state-controlled, socialist realism of the Soviet Union. By promoting that art, they were subtly promoting the core values of American capitalism: individualism, freedom, and innovation. They weren't selling a policy, they were selling an entire vibe. The Soviets played the exact same game. They pushed their world-class ballet dancers, their chess champions, and their achievements in the space race as proof that the communist system was superior. When Sputnik launched in 1957, it wasn't just a scientific triumph. It was a massive propaganda win, meant to show off Soviet tech and rattle Western confidence. This was a proxy war where a chess match between Boris Spassky and Bobby Fischer, or a painting by Jackson Pollock, became a skirmish in the global fight for ideological supremacy. The playbook had evolved from barking orders to subtle seduction, proving that the best propaganda often doesn't feel like propaganda at all. Chapter 4. The Digital Battlefield, the Modern Era. The fall of the Berlin Wall should have been the end of it. But the war for our minds never ended. It just moved online. The propaganda playbook has been digitized, and the new battlefield is the phone in your pocket. The old top-down model, a government broadcasting one message through posters or TV, is dead. We now live in a messy, chaotic, and hyper-personalized information world, and for a propagandist, this is heaven. The shift started even before social media. During the Gulf Wars, the U.S. military got really good at managing the media by embedding journalists with troops. This gave the public what felt like a front-row seat to the war, but it was a carefully managed view. Reporters depended on the military for access and safety, which created a natural pressure to tell stories that fit the military's narrative. It was a smarter form of control, but it was still broadcasting. The real game changer was the internet and social media. The new playbook is all about speed, virality, and laser-focused targeting. Governments don't need to own a TV station anymore. They can reach millions with an army of anonymous bots and paid influencers. The goal isn't just to push one message, but to completely dominate the conversation, a strategy known as information warfare. It's about amplifying your own story while simultaneously drowning out, discrediting, or just overwhelming any opposing views with a flood of noise. Disinformation is now a primary weapon. Instead of just demonizing an enemy, modern propaganda tries to destroy the very idea of truth. By pumping out fake news, conflicting stories, and doctored videos, state-sponsored trolls create information paralysis. People get so exhausted and cynical that they don't know who to believe. And when you lose faith in institutions like the media, you become vulnerable to the simple, emotionally charged conspiracy theories that serve the propagandist's goals. We see this in the rise of meme warfare. A simple, funny, and shareable image can deliver a powerful political punch, often better than a long article. Groups like ISIS became masters of this, using slick, Hollywood-style production in their videos, and swarming social media to project an image of power that was way bigger than their actual military strength. They recruited thousands of fighters from over 100 countries by turning fear itself into a global recruiting tool. Today's states use these tactics systematically. They micro-target ads to you based on your online clicks, your fears, and your biases. They use AI to create hyper-realistic deepfake videos and to run bot farms that can make a fringe idea look like a massive grassroots movement. Every smartphone is a potential front in this war, and every user is a potential soldier. The propaganda playbook has gone from a monolith to a swarm. It's no longer about winning an argument, it's about making rational argument impossible. It's a war for your attention, for your trust, and ultimately for your reality. Conclusion: from the stark posters of World War I demanding your loyalty, to the subtle cultural bait of the Cold War trying to win your heart, to the viral memes of today engineered to grab your attention and spark your outrage, the tools of propaganda have changed. The tech has gone from the printing press to the algorithm. But the playbook? In its soul, it's the same as it ever was. At its core, all propaganda works on a few basic psychological tricks. It simplifies the world into a fight between good and evil. It pokes at our deepest emotions: fear, pride, anger, and our need to belong. It creates an us to cheer for and a them to unite against. It gives simple answers to hard questions and offers a feeling of certainty in a confusing world. The goal has always been the same: to shape how you see things in order to control what you do. The biggest danger today isn't that we'll be convinced of a single lie, but that the sheer chaos of it all will lead us to believe in nothing. When you're hit with a constant fire hose of disinformation, the natural reaction is to tune out, retreat into your own bubble, and reject any information that challenges what you already think. That is the propagandist's ultimate victory. Not to win the argument, but to make a shared, objective reality feel impossible. But knowledge is the antidote. By understanding this playbook, by recognizing the psychological triggers, and by seeing how these tricks have been used over and over, we can start to build an immunity. The point isn't to become a cynic who trusts no one, but to become a critical thinker who questions everything. The next time a story makes you feel a sudden, powerful jolt of emotion, ask why. When you see a simple black and white story, look for the gray areas. Who is telling this story? What do they want you to believe? And most importantly, what are they leaving out? The war for our minds is the defining conflict of our time, and the first step to winning is just realizing you're on the battlefield. If you found this look behind the curtain of power useful, subscribe and hit the bell for more deep dives into the forces that shape our world. We believe that understanding these systems is the first step toward not being controlled by them. And let us know in the comments, what's the most effective or sneaky piece of modern propaganda you've seen lately? Your examples help us all see the playbook in action. Thanks for watching.